Ahoy Gar! Greetings, I am Tad Larkin, the lore master of Mandalore, and today I'll be digging through the archives to answer the question, just what were the Mandalorians up to between the Battle of Galidraan and the Yuuzhan Vong War? The Battle of Galidraan was the last battle of the Mandalorian Civil War, a conflict between the true Mandalorians, under Mandalore Jaster Mereel, and the Mandalorian Death Watch, founded by Tor Vizsla. The battle resulted in the entire force of the true Mandalorians being destroyed, save for Mandalore Jango Fett, when the Death Watch framed the true Mandalorians in the slaughtering of local Galidraan political activists, and the Republic sent a large force of Jedi when the disastrous battle ensued. The Death Watch, on the other hand, were disbanded after Jango brought down Tor Vizsla's flagship above Corellia, killing a vast majority of Death Watch members, and Vizsla was killed on the planet's surface by Jango. However, not every Mandalorian participated in the war, and those who did not heed Jaster Mereel's call and resisted the temptation of joining the Death Watch remained on Mandalore and other Mandalorian holdings throughout the Mandalore sector. Seeing this conflict come to its bloody end, the Mandalorians realized they were no longer the fighting force they were in the days of the Old Republic, and continued their lives, tending farmlands, working jobs in cities such as Keldabe, and the occasional bounty or mercenary contract here and there. Though they were no longer militaristic, they still honored their warrior traditions and kept true to the res al-Nare. They wore the armor, spoke Mandoa, defended their families, raised their children to be Mandalorians, and contributed to their clan's welfare. However, there really was no Mandalore to rally to in these days. Attitudes toward the now disbanded Death Watch, on the other hand, were abysmal. Former members were shunned, for the most part, and anyone even seen wearing the dreaded orange W on their Beskar gum were just asking to get into a cantina fight, or even worse, a blaster to the back. In the years leading up to the Clone Wars, Mandalore's population steadily increased, and from the rural villages to the bustling capital city of Keldabe, armored-clad citizens went about their daily lives. In 32 BBY, Jango Fett, who had taken on a life of bounty hunting after the Civil War, was approached by the newly anointed Sith Lord Darth Tyrannus, and he was offered a chance to win 5 million credits for the capture of his former apprentice, the now deranged Bando Gora leader Kamari Vosa. Jango tracked Vosa to one of the moons of Bogdan, where upon capturing her, he was confronted by Tyrannus for his reward, and apart from the credits, was also offered the chance to be the prime clone for a clone army belonging to the Republic. Upon realizing the army's true purpose and his eagerness to get revenge on the Jedi for Galidraan, Jango agreed on the condition that he got to keep the first, unaltered clone for himself, to raise as a son.
Unmodified.
Might I inquire as to why?
You might.
Very well. Consider it done. We have a deal then, Jango Fett.
Deal.
Fett soon called 75 of his colleagues and associates, ranging from close friends and even non-Mandalorians, to help train this clone army, under the condition that they could not return to their homes and families. They became known as the Khoi Valdar, literally translating to those who no longer exist, for they were now technically under the employment of the Republic, serving as training sergeants. Noteworthy individuals such as Kal Skarada, Wallan Val, Rav Browler, Dread Priest, and Midge Gillimar trained these new clone troopers, and in doing so, some of their Mandalorian mannerisms began to rub off on the clone trainees. Kal Skarada, who would train many of the clone Commando units, even took 6 Null-class advanced recon clone troopers under his protection when they were threatened with execution at the hands of the Kaminoans for quality control purposes, and he would later adopt these clones as his own children, as per Mandalorian custom. The Clone Wars broke out in 22 BBY, and it was the first galaxy-wide conflict seen since the New Sith Wars, 978 years prior, and many Mandalorians saw this conflict as an opportunity to make money doing what they do best. Mandalorian mercenaries were hired by both the Galactic Republic and the Confederacy of Independent Systems, for the Republic didn't have enough clone troopers during the beginning of the war, and the Confederacy's droid soldiers were only so competent. A few of the training sergeants, such as Kal Skirata and Wallen Vau, renewed their contracts with the Republic and served under the Special Operations Brigade to remain close with their Commando trainees. Meanwhile, on the Confederacy side, a Mandalorian by the name of Gez Hokan was hired to protect a research lab on Kilura, tasked with creating a Fett genome-targeting nanovirus. However, he was killed by Omega Squad when they raided the lab and captured the chief scientist in charge. In 20 BBY, on Zaja, the Republic hired a group of Mandalorians to infiltrate and destroy a CIS base there. However, they failed, and the Republic had to send a force led by Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Jedi Master Tonho. One of the first-generation ARC troopers, trained by Jango Fett himself, Alpha Theta 2, nicknamed Spar, ended up going rogue and left for Mandalore. Regaled with stories by Jango of the Mandalorian protectors who eventually split into the true Mandalorians and the Death Watch, Spar set about rebuilding the Mandalorian protectors, using his resemblance to Jango for leverage. He was proclaimed Manda-LORE the Resurrector, and he recruited men and women from the local police forces and even former Death Watch members into his revitalized Mandalorian protectors, and they were soon hired by the CIS to hit major Republic worlds. Unfortunately for the Mandalorian protectors, they suffered disastrous defeats at New Holstis, Kamino, New Bornalix, and Norval II, where only Spar and his trusted lieutenants, Fen Shisa and Toby Dala, survived. Back on the Republic side, Kal Skirata witnessed firsthand the mistreatment of clones in the GAR, when Phi of Omega Squad was refused medical treatment after he fell on a thermal detonator to save his squad. It was then that he realized the clones really had no future after the war, and with the financial help of his clever Null ARC trooper sons, as well as Wallen Vau's family fortune, he founded a settlement on Mandalore and began a desperate search for a way to stop the clones' accelerated aging. Kyrimaret was to be a haven for any clone that chose to desert from the GAR, and Skirata made it his base of operations. In 19 BBY, Executive Order 66 was issued to all clones in the GAR, requesting the elimination of their Jedi generals, and Skirata thought it was as good a time as any to get his boys the OSIC out of there. Unfortunately, Darman decided to stay with Niner after he was injured, but half of Omega Squad and all the Knolls made it to Kyrimaret. Mere weeks after the establishment of the new order, Skirata got a hold of Uvalut Kale Uthan, who nearly created the Fett genome-targeting nanovirus on Kilura 3 years earlier, and the Kaminoan geneticist Ko Sai, and with the help of the Jedi-turned-Mandalorian Barden Yusik, brought them to Kyrimaret in an attempt to create an antidote for the clones' accelerated aging. Over the months, more clones deserted and moved to Kyrimaret. As to whether they discovered the cure for the clones' accelerated aging, really nothing more is written about the subject. All records on Kyrimaret abruptly cease, unfortunately. The Empire soon moved into Mandalore, establishing a base of operations near the outskirts of Keldabe, and the Mandalorians seemed indifferent to it at first, being assured by their Mandalore that it would only be temporary. But over time, the Empire's occupation became overbearing, to the point where the Mandalorians became enslaved. Forced to mine Beskar, Mandalore's most valuable resource of lightsaber-resistant iron, Fen Shisa, who took up the title of Mandalore after Spar relinquished his leadership, led an uprising 3 years after the Battle of Yavin. With the help of Leia Organa, Shisa and the Mandalorian protectors managed to reclaim Mandalore from the Imperial. Sadly, Toby Dala had to sacrifice himself to destroy the Imperial garrison. With Mandalore freed, Shisa and the once again reformed Mandalorian protectors struck back against Grand Admiral Mitlin Tackle, who governed the Mandalore sector, and with him gone, the Mandalorians began to reclaim their former holdings. Meanwhile, all throughout the Galactic Civil War, Mandal Motors, Mandalore's primary exporter of starships and vehicles, produced technological marvels like the Canderous Assault Tank, Star Viper, Crusader corvette and the mighty Keldabe battleship, which they sold to various crime organizations such as the Black Sun Syndicate and the Zon Consortium. Grateful for Leia's help in reclaiming Mandalore, the Protectors often aided the Rebel Alliance in the years leading up to and after the Battle of Endor, and when the Scissorook, Nagai, and Tops invaded the galaxy from an orbiting satellite galaxy, they played an integral part in their defeat. As the Alliance of Free Planets transitioned into the New Republic, the Mandalorians aided them once again, this time at the Battle of Mindor against Lord Shadowspawn. Under Shisa's leadership, the Mandalorian Protectors continued to see conflict, taking mercenary contracts just as in the days under Jester Mareel. In 21 ABY, Shisa was tracked to the planet Shogun by Boba Fett, Jango Fett's clone son, after a bounty was placed on him by Taun We in revenge for Shisa's assault on Commando during the Clone Wars. The events revolving around what transpired on Shogun after Fett found Shisa remains unknown to this day. However, we do know that Shisa saved Fett's life when they were surrounded by Sevets, in which Shisa was gravely injured, and as a favor, Fett saved Shisa from what he deemed a rotten death and gave him a mercy killing. Shisa always considered himself to be keeping the spot warm for Fett, as in the past he expressed his desire to call Scarada how he felt that only an heir of Jango Fett was fit to be Mandalore during those troubling times, and it was then that Boba Fett finally ended his 40-year bounty hunting career and took up the title of Mandalore. Fett led the Mandalorians through the Yuuzhan Vong War, and at first they were allied with the extragalactic invaders, but during the final year of the war, they decided that switching sides would be in their best interests. But that's a transmission for another day. This ends my findings on the Mandalorians post-Galidraan. If you have any suggestions for future transmissions, don't be afraid to drop a comment. In the meantime, keep your comm channels open for future transmissions, and don't forget to subscribe. Tad Larkin, out.